Okay, everyone, we will call this meeting to order tonight. The first item of business is going to be a public hearing. I see we have a stenographer there. I'd ask that before anybody speaks, they just identify themselves, keeping in mind that we do have a stenographer. And to set the caption, I'll note that this is a public hearing for Z622. The applicant, Barrington Heights LLC, proposes to reduce the amount of dedicated open space by .017 acres through a lot line revision and add it to an adjacent parcel, tax parcels 49, 11, 14, 079, and 49, 11, 14, 079, R1 PRD zoning. Would the applicant like to come forward? Is the applicant here? Okay. Yeah, you want to give us some background, Jim? This is a first.
That's first.
I'm Jim Morrison, Community Development, Municipality, Marysville. Good evening. The applicant Barrington, I'm trying to think of the name of the developer now. I'm sorry? Patowski, I'm sorry, with the Barrington Heights Development on Klein Hollow Road. There was a lot acquired there, and the present owner of the property would like to have the rear lot line extended so that they can put a swimming pool in. This was a PRD development which required a certain amount of percent open space. The PRD was approved with that percentage. We sent it through a rezoning process because we wanted to give public hearing notice for residents, because eventually that property will be in the ownership of the Homeowners Association of all property owners up there having ownership in it. It's a minor lot line revision. We would recommend this, that on the plan to be recorded, that there be a note stating that there shall be no encroachment on the wetland area as identified on that plan.
Okay, awesome. Now, Jim, do you think it would be appropriate to just close the public hearing for now and see if the applicant shows up?
Yes, I would think so. And we could reopen the meeting. Apparently, he's not going to come. The real intent was to try to have any residents that may have had an interest in the plan have an opportunity to public comment.
Okay. Well, with that being noted and the background being said, are there any residents here that are here to talk about this development in particular? Okay, seeing none, council comments or anything to add at this point?
That 017 acres is 731 square feet.
Yeah, it's definitely not a large amount of space here.
No.
I'll say if the applicant comes imminently, because they were caught in traffic, I'd like to hear them, but otherwise let our poor stenographer go home.
Yeah.
Just want to set, 5-minute time, 10, whatever.
There we go. So let's just say we'll close the record for now, and then in 5 minutes, if they're not here, they might have to come back or we'll figure it out. Okay, so can we have a motion to close the record, please?
Make a motion to close the record for the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the record is closed, and we'll see what happens in 5 minutes. With that being said, we'll just get to our regular agenda. So we'll call the regular agenda meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dice,
Here.
Mrs. Ling,
Present.
Mr. Spadaro,
Here.
Dr. Lee Corns,
Here.
Mr. Lemak, Mr. Stepanovich,
Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here.
Mayor Simon.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
And
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Nestico, do we have any unlisted amendments this evening?
No, there are no unlisted amendments. I would just simply note that the stenographer, I think, is finishing up, and we can, if there's any reason to to keep her here.
Nah, no. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, they are. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you say that. I apologize.
Yeah, let's get an ETA.
That's no problem. Trying to.
While we're getting that, let's just continue with some of the
Sure.
easier parts of the agenda. We have our consent calendar items, which are just the minutes from the last meeting this evening. Are there any questions or concerns about the minutes? Can I please have a motion to approve the consent calendar items?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar items.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Tony and Carl. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to comments by the mayor. Mike?
Sure. We'll have the slides come up here in a moment. There are three items for this month. There is a tax aid prep program, I apologize, being held at the Murraysville Community Center at 3091 Carson Street. If you are interested in having your taxes done, you must set up an appointment in advance. No walk-in services will be available. To set up an appointment, call 412-394-8959. If there is no answer, please leave a message and they will return your call. The next item is the Murraysville Recreation Hot Chocolate Hike. The next date will be Tuesday, February 14th at the Lillian Kelman Reserve at 10 a.m. Join the rec department for some fun 2 to 3 mile hikes over the winter. Wooded hikes with some slopes and may require stepping over fallen trees. Please dress for the weather and plan for the terrain. You can find out more about the event at MurraysvillePARecreation.com. Additionally, there is yoga with Carol Hunsick, a certified yoga instructor, gentle yoga, on Mondays, February 6th through the 27th. It's $13 per class, drop-in only, no pre-registration required, at the community center from 6 to 7 p.m. Again, you can find out more on the Murraysville municipal website or on the Murraysville Recreation website as well. So I believe that is all for this month from the mayor.
Okay, awesome. Any comments on behalf of yourself?
Just one item to note for council that we received our rates for the dental plan for municipal employees. It was a increase from the prior year. We did budget for a 5% increase, so we'll see a small amount of relief in the budgeted amount for the 2023 calendar year. That is all from the chief administrator.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, that brings us to community input. Can we see if we have any signed up? Thank you. Okay. I see we have one person signed up, Michael Tamika, sir? Yeah. Please just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Michael Tometsko, Tometsko. I live at 4250 Westertown Road. I was here to, at the previous council meeting, talking about the rezoning for a development on Westertown Road. I just wanted to speak again about some concerns I have about traffic on that road related to that development. The last meeting, it was discussed if it stayed at 21 houses, which would remain rural residential, that would be a minimum of 42 trips a day. I think that's very conservative, just from a service standpoint, with different vehicles coming to those homes. But just at 42 trips, that's over 15,000 car trips on that road in a year. I think that poses a hazard to a lot of the cyclists and pedestrians that use that road between Walter Reserve and the park. I had a suggestion that I'd like to put forth, and that's, when that property gets developed, excavating equipment will be there. I think it would be nice to see an enhancement to the community if the developer would be gracious enough to maybe put in like a bike path or a walking trail along the road for a safety standpoint. I think that would be a great enhancement to that area and for the safety of our community. My other concerns are, our power grid out there. We moved in there in 2008. Even last year, during the winter, we lost our power for 5 days. We all have generators that live out there. We're considered a low priority on the power grid, according to the power company. So to add additional homes there, that's a concern. Those homes would be on our power grid that comes from Hilty Road. So those are some concerns. I always feel that, you want to take your community and make it better. My wife, the old Walter farmhouse, has the original hardwood, original door, was becoming dilapidated. We restored it. So it'd be nice to see, the developments going in that we're enhancing our community, and I think that bike trail would be a great way to do that. And it would be great for safety as well.
Awesome.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now no one else signed up, but for the good of the order, would anyone else like to give public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to liaison comments and committee reports. Let's start with Carl.
Planning Commission meets next week.
Okay, Tony?
Medic 1 meets at the end of the month.
Okay, Jamie?
I have a rather lengthy
Oh,
report.
awesome, let's do it.
Not terribly lengthy, but a bit more than usual. And to remind council, several different times we've talked about how Frank Burnett, with whom we were very satisfied, had been looking to ultimately eventually retire and transitioning his business and his research. He had chosen &Co. So we had talked about how &Co for now would serve the municipality with Frank still at the helm, and in the future we would decide if we wanted to continue with them. So with that said, during several council meetings, we had raised that we would like if the Director of Finance and our Chief Administrator would just kind of casually, not formally, informally look around and take a look at who may be serving other communities, so that we had a sense that we could confirm that we were still exercising our due diligence in terms of satisfaction, in terms of cost, that we definitely did still want to stay with &Co at this time. And so I met with Chief Administrator, Director of Finance, and the members of the Pension Board last week, and there were 3 primary goals for that meeting. Really, it was to get a sense of the history that was behind the Pension Board and actually the Finance Committee as well, because we don't want to lose Jim, of course, but he's moving on. Eventually he'll leave us. We've lost Diane, and I know she's still around as a resource, but you do have the risk of losing important knowledge of what has happened in the past when you have new members coming over. And we're kind of coming into a new era with the municipality. And as I've got one more year really on council, I wanted to make sure that then future councilors are set up with information. So that's kind of the purpose for that history piece that I want to share. So we want to look at history, happiness, and cost. Condensing this immensely, I think I've already talked to a couple of you, and you can always reach out if you have any questions. But in terms of history, I can't talk that much. 2003, one of the current board members of the Pension Board, Mark Miller, was one of the founding members of our Finance Committee. And at that time, they really wanted to find a way to better manage ourselves instead of using an insurance company. It's not unheard of what we do here in Murraysville, but it's also not very common for there to be a board of advisors that is constantly looking at the pension plan for their community, as opposed to just letting a company just manage it for them. After a while, they developed the pension board, and they contracted with an asset advisor fiduciary. We've gone through several over the years. Around 2011 or so, that's when we had contracted with Frank, is my understanding, and overall had been very, very happy with Frank, had found that he was very responsive to feedback and providing information that we asked for. For example, he's included several custom reports that he'll provide annually or quarterly or whatever we need. He's been very flexible with the municipality schedule, so that's been great. So again, we weren't at all dissatisfied with him or with ANCO, but again, wanted to exercise our due diligence, especially because we're talking not only about taxpayer dollars, ultimately coming in, our management of that, but also we're talking about the retirement of all of our police officers and our non-uniform personnel. So when the Director of Finance and Chief Administrator looked around, they had a couple of responses. There were 3 that were maybe somewhat viable in terms of, they could provide the services we were seeking and the information we wanted. And so in conversation, we, as the pension board with the Chief Administrator and Director of Finance, felt that none of the responses were in any way superior to what we have now. Great options, we appreciated the responses, but very happy with what Frank provides and determined that the rates that we have with ANCO are still, they're exceptionally reasonable in comparison with rates that some of the other respondents had provided, or that we are aware that they would likely charge. So for now, we're still working with Frank as our primary point of contact with ANCO. We know at some point in the future that will change, and at some point in the future, ANCO may change their rates. But I do want to reassure council and the community that since the founding of the Finance Committee, which is kind of melted away now that they reformed as the pension board, really, they've done their due diligence over the years. We really did look at that history closely and discuss it. We've looked again right now just to make sure that we're still keeping our fingers on the pulse of what's available, what other communities are doing, and how municipality of Murrysville's assets are holding up, even during the pandemic. As you know, they've taken quite a hit, but we're doing a lot better, I think, than a lot of other communities still. And a lot of that was because of how well funded we were going into the pandemic, and how closely our pension board just keeps an eye on things. So we certainly should reevaluate again at some point in the future, and we should continue to do that periodically to make sure that we're still setting ourselves up as responsibly as possible. But right now, we're in a very good place, and
Good.
with that.
That's amazing news, and I know we have one of the most well-funded pensions there is, so if we're different from most municipalities, let's keep doing what we're doing. That's awesome. Thank you. Jamie?
There was a school board meeting this past Monday. I was not able to attend, but I did watch it on YouTube, and there was nothing really of joint concern for us. Right now, the next school board meeting is on the 13th of February.
Awesome. Thank you. Matt?
The Parks and Recreation Board meets on the 14th of February, so no update, nothing.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Now, before we get to our workshop items, I know we had some people walk in. Is the applicant here for Barrington Heights? All right, please come forward, sir. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask the stenographer, let's go back on the record. We've reopened the hearing. If you could just introduce yourself, sir, and then just explain the project for us a little bit.
Okay. I'm Mike Patulski with Patulski Homes. We're asking for a lot line revision due to when we placed the residence, we had to push the house back a little bit further than what we thought we were going to initially do it because of a ravine. With that being said, it was kind of, they were trying to put a pool in the backyard, so we were trying to manipulate the back building line so they could have room for the pool. So we were essentially taking some, what was it? I think it was, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but there's an open space in behind it. We're essentially taking, I think, 0.017 acres out of that to include in their property.
Okay. Again, this is a very de minimis sort of change. No one from the public showed up to even comment on this. Any questions or concerns for the applicant from council?
So that's just open space behind that lot, and you're just taking that space, adding it to their lot. To
Yeah.
make their lot
Yeah,
better.
we're still well within the open space
Yeah.
requirement.
Cool.
Okay. Well, hearing nothing else, could I have a motion to fully close the public hearing now?
Motion to fully close the public hearing.
Second.
Oh, someone had a question?
I apologize. I'd like to interject before we close the hearing.
Oh.
Do you want to address it, or do you want me to?
As I commented, we would like to see a note on the subdivision plan indicating that there would be no encroachment within the wetland buffer.
Okay. Well, then we'll note that there will be no encroachment on the wetland buffer, and that should be added as a condition. Applicant, is there any objection to that condition? No. Okay, great. There was a motion and a second to close. Any final thoughts from anyone? Nope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's closed. Thanks for staying. All right, that brings us to our workshop items. Now, these are not action items, and we are going to begin with a discussion on the Fijione Enterprises rezoning request. That's approximately 54.6 acres located at Westertown Road. It is a request to go from RR rural residential zoning to R1 residential zoning. The applicant was at our last meeting, so we got a pretty big overview. Before council dives into this, applicant, is there anything you'd like to add?
Good evening. My name is Bill Siddig, representing Mr. Fijione. Just, there were, as we noted at the last hearing, there were a couple of neighbors. Mr. Fischione's here. Just briefly, heard from Mr. Tometsko. He met with Mr. and Mrs. Tometsko and with Ray Renda and noted the concerns. A lot of those concerns, of course, would be with the land development plan, and we would come in and do that. The concern with the power is just really misplaced. We've done investigation, and we're on an entirely different grid. He's on a different section or grid from the park that we're on, so it wouldn't affect it. I'd actually like to come and say we're on the same one and we'd improve it, because I think we would, because you'd have to check the upgrades and maybe do something, but I think it's going to not do anything either way. The other thing had to do with trips, and that wasn't any transportation testimony, and I know one of the engineers may have said 42, but I don't think we should hang our hat on that. What it really is 21 lots versus 28. So we're talking about a difference of 7 homes, really, because that's why we're here. And I sat here last time and I watched, and I would say we could have done a better job with council. We went through it a bunch of times with Planning Commission, and sometimes you think you're repeating yourself, but you haven't heard it. And the whole difference of the 7 lots has nothing to do with the lot area or density requirements. It's whenever you put all of the requirements together in the PRD. And Mr. Fijione has done an extraordinary amount of engineering to get to a rezoning. And we're only here saying 28 lots because we know after the engineering that's all we can do. And that's environmentally sensitive areas, largely the creeks and wetlands. So it isn't, I know the concern is, well, if we make it R1, then it could be something comfortable that nobody is going to be able to do more under your regs than 28. And then the other thing we wanted to try to emphasize, and I know it was there, but I don't know that it was resonating, is that even with the 28 lots, and it's all driven by the infrastructure, it's the cost of the public street, per foot, basically comes to that. And with the help of the municipality and Mr. Maital, they're able to work to shrink that road down to actually make this plan more workable if we would get there. But the real issue is, even with that, the land costs are going to be $250,000 lots. So even though they're 1 acre plus and it's very low density, there's going to be 28 homes and 54 acres. That's still a lot for a lot. That's a lot of money for a home. So that drives, 4 to 5 multiple. It's a minimum $1 million home, right? And if you have fewer, then you have to put the same infrastructure in. And you have lots that are unaffordable. I mean, there is a legitimate concern that these lots won't be affordable. We share that, but we're not coming in for R2 or for more dense. So we're trying to say this is really the minimum. All things you can make a go of it with really minimal density and R1. And the other thing, something the municipality, I've wrestled with this in a lot of towns that I lived in, Marshall and Franklin Park, that when I moved there weren't all sewered. Whenever you get extensions there and you get an authority that covers it, it necessarily changes, because then you can do public improvements. Not only can you have to. The folks that are here that are very low density, they have septic. And thing to do 4 or 5 homes here in estate homes and do septic, well, you can't do that. I mean, you won't get the approval. I mean, we just don't have lots that perk. So it really is, what we'd suggest to the council is it's an opportunity to do very high-end homes in a very rural type environment. Most rural you can have with doing public improvements, because we're looking at a very high end of homes. So I don't know if all the details and the numbers that really came across, but that's sort of the overall picture. And I can tell you, having been involved for months and months, looked at many, many different schemes on lots and frontages, and so it's a very refined plan for this stage. So we're pretty comfortable if he would come back in, that's what we'd be dealing with. And what I'd be somewhat concerned about, because I have to say to Paul, hey, Paul, what do I do now? It's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You can't really do 21 lots. And I'm not going to come in and do a validity challenge, but that's when you can get more dense homes. You can get somebody saying, look, I can't do, I mean, you wouldn't approve 28. I mean, you can't even do 28 estate lots. I need higher density to make this, and then you have the potential of getting in a validity challenge, much higher density, because there are utilities here now. So, there is access to it. You actually have to put them in. You have to put a public street in. You have to put public sewer. So it really drives it. As much as you want it to be rural, our infrastructure costs dictate it's not truly rural. That's just whenever it's redeveloped, you just can't build that much roadway unless you're doing a private driveway and septic. This is really minimal density that you're really going to end up with. So I hope, I know it was just thrown in lots and here's 28 and 21, but there's really the overview, really a very rigorous exercise in trying to say, because he's going to live there, like he wants it to be as rural as he can. So, I mean, it's self-driven that's his same motivation as the municipality, is to have it as rural and as at least dense that he can, but still make it work. And we know from Mr. Mytall and the admonishments of very experienced members of the Planning Commission, that's a heavy lift for him to get there and to even do this. But he wants to take a run at it. We think it would be a very attractive plan, and the downside isn't really that great. You end up with 28 lots on 58 acres, or 54 acres, and that's not a function of density. It's because of the land. I mean, you really can't develop that full site. It is environmentally sensitive, and this is the best way it can be developed. So I don't know, Paul, he spoke with his neighbors. Same concerns about getting utilities, and while we can't provide those, we can extend them to points where they can connect. And when we go in for the land development plan, we would obviously do that. On traffic, we know where the best site distance is on Westertown and where it's appropriate, and this level of traffic is really not an issue in terms of it working. So all those other concerns, and with our neighbors, with buffering, with trails, with all of that, we really think when they get into the actual plans, they'll be happy it's here. In fact, I know Paul said that Mr. Renda, he said, look, I bought my property and it was for sale. I knew something was going to be there. So, they obviously they would also like to be connected and would like to facilitate that.
Okay, thank you. Council, questions, or Jim?
We put this on, staff put this on the agenda as a workshop item because we had a number of public comments at the last meeting. We wanted to give council an opportunity to discuss it further, ask any questions they may have. Council can direct staff as to whether to bring it back as an agenda item at this meeting for action.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Council, questions, concerns, thoughts?
I think the only concern that I would have is it's a big thing to rezone anything, especially in the rural residential side. So, the setting of a precedent of that would be really my only concern with it. I understand they want to put more of the lots in, but doing a PRD to get the 28 lots in there, whereas it could be a lower stay at the 21 mark, and I understand that would make the lots larger sizes, which would be more expensive. I certainly understand that part. That would be my only hang-up is, are there options to keep it as rural residential, keep it in the 21 lot size, and, you know, do a common area, or, you know, like certain neighborhoods have, you know, sections of land that, you know, you have something there for the neighbors that they kind of all share. I just, that would be my, you know, my only hang up with things. I think he's done a fantastic job on, you know, plans and doing a lot of things, but, you know, we've had a lot of comments from the public as well that are valid comments, so.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
That's my thoughts.
No, I think that Mac's comment on precedent is a key point.
No, because we certainly get a lot of requests for rezoning. You know, a lot of developers say, oh, you know, we really want to build there, but we just want to build just a little bit more. So I certainly echo the sentiment of the precedent of, again, trying to do what we can or what a developer can with what they have. So with that being said, I mean, right now it's a workshop item. It's not even up for a vote. Is anyone in favor of having this on a future agenda for a vote? Okay, hearing no one, that would mean it would just remain as rural residential. It would not be rezoned. Anything to add from council? Any thoughts?
Just where do you stop? If this goes through, then the next one goes through, and then you can't stop them at all.
Yep.
So you've got a zoning, you have to keep with it. If you give one exception, then you have to give more exceptions.
I think
I'm in
that's fair.
agreement with what everyone else has said.
Okay. Okay, well, it sounds like council has come to a decision there, so thank you, everyone. We'll just move on to the next agenda item. Yep, so would be a discussion of CU 622, an application for excavation into steep slopes and poor soils, Connors Residence, corner of Ashbaugh and Mumment Road, RR zoning, and they are requesting a waiver of Chapter 97 F4 driveways of the municipal code. Mike or Jim, is there any preliminary you would want to do before we jump into this?
We had a public hearing on this matter, several public comments. The Connor residents at Maymont and Ashbaugh Road proposes to build a single-family structure on approximately 38 acres of land. He proposes to use an existing driveway there for the gas well because of other challenges on the property. He cannot meet the standards under Chapter 97 to meet the 15% slope and has asked for a waiver of that. Planning Commission has reviewed the matter and recommends approval. There are conditions attached to the recommendation. Staff found that all the conditional use requirements were met for the steep slope major excavation and present this to council again as a workshop item because of the public comment at the last meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Council, similar to, or I guess I should say, is the applicant here? Would they like to add anything?
Jamie Harshman, engineer for the applicant, just here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Council, questions, concerns, thoughts?
Well, my only concern, it's another exception. We just got rid of one, and now we have another exception, so where do we stop? We want our slopes to be 17, 18% instead of 15?
I think for me, I agree with the other exception. The difference in my mind is it's the difference between one person's home on the property versus development of 20, 21, 28 homes. I'd like to understand a little bit better if there are, and I realize that you wouldn't be requesting this if you didn't feel so, but any other options for the driveway that can switch, you know, more of a switch. It's a large parcel.
Sure. I'll answer that question as best I can. We've spent the greater part of a year or longer working on this plan just for a driveway to this property. The 38 acres sits at a hilltop. The hilltop itself is beautiful, but there are steep slopes all around the property. We did at least 10 different iterations of driveway options, to try to get a single-family home, to get access to a single-family home site. We were able to come up, which involved significant excavation. I mean, significant excavation to get there. That was submitted to Murraysville and also the DEP and the Conservation District. The Conservation District and DEP put the brakes on it. They said, why in the world are you destroying that much of the conditions out there? And Mr. Connors gave us a go-ahead to go back and approach you guys and say, well, let's try to come up with some kind of middle ground. You know, there's an existing driveway there. It serves a couple gas wells on the property. It's 25% in places. It's really steep, a gravel driveway. What DEP and Conservation both recommended is that we look at how good can we get it regrading that existing driveway. And so that's what we have in front of you right now. We received a favorable feedback from your planning staff when we submitted that one. And we're kind of on the 1 yard line. The DEP is happy with it. Conservation District's happy with it. I just got an email last week from them saying everything looks good to them. But it does significantly hinge on that waiver because if for some reason we can't get it approved at 16.9%, it's going to be, I don't know how to describe it to you. I mean, it will be a tremendous amount of excavation to get to what's just going to be a single-family home site. I talked a little bit at the Planning Commission level about the difference between 15% and 16.9%. There's a 1.9% differential. And if you were to walk out to your patio here and see the ADA circle where a wheelchair landing is, that's 2% max. So the difference between 15% and 16.9 is less than 2%, which if you're standing on a 1.9% pad, you wouldn't even feel the difference. The trick, from an engineering standpoint, the trick is once you start to cut a little bit into a steep hillside, you have to chase the grades really, really far. So just to cut a couple feet, you end up chasing the hillside up and down quite a bit of distance. So what we've come up with, the plan that you got in front of you right now, keeps everything. It's still a big project. It's still quite a bit of earthwork, but it keeps it a little more reasonable, manageable. The design itself was a bit of back and forth between the Conservation District, DEP, and ourselves before we even brought it to you guys. Also, I spoke to a little bit in the letter where we requested the waiver that if it helps you in your decision, I believe the intent of your steep slope ordinance is to try to limit the amount of excavation in those steep slope areas. So with this compromise on the slope itself, we achieve that, and we're minimizing the amount that we have to excavate into these steep slope areas. It's still, quite a bit of digging, but we've got the geotech analysis done for that. All that to say, I hope that we've justified the request based on the unique constraints of the site. I think it's about the minimum amount of relief that we could ask for to still keep this project feasible.
The option, question for you, before you guys. The option that you said that would take so much more excavating, I mean, that would be taking out trees and, I mean, is it a wooded area like that? I mean, what type of, or is it just the moving of more dirt?
Both. Both. The 15% option we came up with was an entirely new driveway from the northern part of the property that would crisscross diagonal to the home site. It had a bit of a curve and a switchback, and it intersected with the gas well driveway. So you'd end up having two driveways on the property. You'd have the driveway for the residents, and then you'd still have the gas well driveway there at 25%. But the amount of excavation, the length of road was probably 2.5 to 3 times the amount of what this plan is. We ended up with, because of the length of the road, the amount of cut, we had 5 different stormwater management areas throughout the road to intercept it. This plan has 2. I mean, still 2 is probably one more than I would have liked, but it was, I didn't like it. I designed it, but I didn't like it. So
the applicant has been accommodating in the sense that there were questions raised by the emergency services. They did correct the access to the driveway, and we did get an email from the chief at Sardis saying that he was satisfied with both the access from Ashball and also the turnaround to Governor's Drive at the top. Mr. Hirschman is correct. The philosophy behind the steep slope ordinance is to stay away from the steep slopes as much as you can. The relief here is essentially a relief from Chapter 97. As I had stated, under the conditional use requirements, he has met the conditions as stated in the ordinance.
I have a question. The resident that came at the last meeting who was discussing the water issue on his property from the drainage that already exists, I mean, I understand water flows downhill.
Yes.
Okay, but you're saying with the stormwater management on the driveway,
Yes.
you have two? I mean, is that going to control this?
Yes.
It will control it?
Yes. So also, you guys have in your files as submitted, and we've given it to DEP as well, stormwater management report. The two stormwater management are what they call infiltration trenches, basically oversized pipe bedded in stone, buried in the ground with control orifices that regulate the discharge. So the ultimate discharge rates are, there's a 90% reduction for the entire watershed that drains through them, not just the driveway, but everything that drains through those tanks will be at 90% or less than pre-developed rates. So it will slow the water down. Also, because we'll be over an acre disturbance, we have an NPDES permit. We have to manage water quality also. So the tanks are designed to infiltrate and capture the difference in volume for the 2-year storm event from pre to post. So you'll see a reduction in the volume of water as well as the rate. Also, there's proposed water quality inserts in the inlets in the road, which help to filter out sediments and pollutants and things at the inlets. So there'll be a water quality improvement as well.
What about during the excavation process? What if there's a hard rain during the excavation process?
Sure, there's a whole other set of drawings that go together with that. That's the erosion control plan for the site. Involves rock construction entrance, silt fences, limits of disturbance, a specific sequence of activities, things that have to happen in sequence. There's a schedule of maintenance activities with respect to every erosion control device on the site. We're in a high quality watershed, which means that every erosion control device that we specify has to be what they call ABACT, which is available or best available control technologies. It has to be whatever DEP has said, this is the best thing that we have available. So we, for example, we can't use filter fences. We have to use compost silt socks. The rock construction entrance has to be 100 feet long instead of 50. So every element of that control plan is the best available right now, and also it has to be approved by DEP. There's a requirement for daily inspection logs during construction by the site contractor. There's critical stages of inspections where the engineer has to be on site to inspect certain things as they happen. It will also be under the oversight of the Conservation District and DEP, just by the fact of the permit that's needed through the departments.
What is the difference in cost between the short excavation with the 2 drainage and the serpentine with the?
I can't tell you exactly because I never saw it take off. I'm going to say it was a 2 times difference. I mean, you figure we had 5 tanks before. I've got 2 now. Those tanks are very expensive. The length of driveway it's shorter now than it would have been the other way. So there's a cost savings there as well.
Do you specialize in designing properties for steep slopes?
Yes, we do. Our firm's a civil engineering firm, and we do everything from the PRDs that you talked about before to family home sites.
When she had asked about the water runoff that resident had come and asked about, so you're saying with what you're presenting here, it's going to improve what it is now?
Absolutely.
Those two,
yes.
On how much water those residents are seeing on runoff just as it sits with none.
Yes, on a peak rate and a volume and a quality standpoint, it will improve all 3 of those factors.
Improved by what you're proposing to do.
That's correct.
One of the comments public hearing was the concern of the ownership of the pipe that was conveying water once it hit the inlet on Ashball. The applicant has agreed to the condition that, let's see here, the applicant must obtain permission to access the private storm sewer system for a stormwater, or in the alternative, make all necessary improvements to access the municipal storm sewer system for capture and conveyance of the stormwater generated from the site.
Do you have a sense of the reduction in stormwater runoff if you had shifted to the serpentine, more of the serpentine driveway
The
instead?
question again, what would the difference
If
be?
you were to do that, like that more serpentine style driveway,
Yeah.
what would you anticipate that the reduction in stormwater runoff might be in comparison to the current request before us?
We would still be targeting the same goals. That 90% goal would be the design factor of that system. So the net effect would be the same, because again, we're shooting at the same target.
And I have two quick questions, kind of on that same piece for our Director of Community Development, just because you've been following this and on this. Is it your sense that with these reports, the data that they've collected, that we really are going to see a reduction in the water for Mr. Entreri, I believe it was, who was here, for the other neighbors? And then to piggyback on that, assuming the data would, of course, be accurate from the reports, is there recourse for nearby property owners if the reduction anticipated is not met, or if, in fact, conditions are exacerbated instead of reduced?
What they're proposing, those are all design concepts that meet ordinance requirements. The 90% reduction is required within that watershed because of the high-quality water stream, Haymaker.
Okay.
Whether it's 89 or 88 or 91 or 92, carry the one. It's all formulas and estimates at the time. So I don't think I could say, is he going to accomplish 90%? The goal is to accomplish 90% because that's what the ordinance requirements are.
And if, let's just say that one way or the other, they do the driveway, they excavate, they do the driveway, and one way or another, they're at 70%, or make it worse somehow. What happens then?
He's got to correct it. If he's putting water on his neighbor, he's got to correct it.
And let's just say that the applicant, and I'm just being far-fetched here, they're just not able to correct it to the point that they're bankrupting themselves.
Oh, they have to post a bond for the improvements.
So that would be a guarantee that the nearby residents could count on, because that bond is posted up front.
We can't account for a resident's opinion, but from an engineering point of view, that will be reviewed before a bond is released.
Yep.
I'd be concerned that when you go from 15 to 16.9, that's an increase in grade of 1.9%. And if another applicant comes along and says, well, I'd like to have 18.1, it's only 1.2% more than what you've already allowed with the 16.9. So I guess what I'm saying is that just here again, I think getting back to that key word precedent, it's just, you're taking what's been established, which was like at the high end, meaning 15% grade is not necessarily desirable, but that's kind of like the limit. And here we're talking about going beyond the limit.
Sure.
And with due respect to the work that's been done, to justify the 16.9, I'd be concerned about that.
Sure. And that's a valid point. In my role as an engineer, I also serve as the municipal engineer in various places, so I understand the concept of precedent and when variance, a waiver, modification is requested. And all that to say, we tried our best to provide you the information that this request is based entirely on the unique characteristics of this property. So it is because of the existing terrain, the existing limits of the property itself. There are hardships, to use that word, that the applicant has not created. So therefore, in considering this waiver, your consideration is based on the unique characteristics of this property, therefore not setting a precedent, unless someone came in with those same unique situations on another property somewhere. and also put parallel or put that in line with the requirements of your steep slope district or the intent of the steep slope district. And I think we've made a good argument. This is beneficial to both Murraysville and also the applicant, again, because it is unique to this property and this property only.
Yeah, I guess I feel, I really do respect where you're coming from, but I feel like any property would be unique and subject to individual conditions. So for example, with this property, there was a major concern about whether or not emergency vehicles could still access the property. Even if somebody requested just 15.5% on a future property, it may still be denied because of infrastructure, emergency vehicle access, any number of things. I think that, and the difference here is that protected waterway, the watershed, and the ability to improve it either way, but we also may not have that in another property. So I feel that there are a number of conditions here. If the applicant is amenable to them, I respect that it's a single property owner with a single home, and that landowner, it's property. I'd like to see him be able to enjoy his property for himself.
That's my thought too, is, obviously, as we discussed before with precedent, that's a big thing to consider. I do see the difference in a development as a precedent as opposed to a single landowner with a home trying to do that, because I kind of at first was swaying more towards what you guys had said, not setting a precedent for that, but I think they've exhausted on this one every possible aspect pretty much to be able to just put his home on his own single family lot. And I think if it's going to improve that water that much and do that, I think they kind of swung me to the other side that I agree with Jamie. I kind of feel like the plan's good, and as long as we have those things in place, that a bond and whatnot, that we're going to guarantee that things are going to be the way that they're saying, then I'm leaning more towards the being okay with it.
Without it being doubly expensive for the
Right.
property
Can I
owner.
ask another question? How long has this applicant owned this property?
I just purchased it a few years ago. We started looking into this for him, I want to say 2 years ago. I think he had it under agreement at the time. So it hasn't been that long that he's owned it. Mr. Connors told me his wife fell in love with it. And therefore he bought it and has invested quite a bit in engineering to get to this point. So it's just been a couple years.
Sounds like it. I still have an issue with it being a precedent, and that it could be applied to a development. Just because this one case happens to be a single-family home, that doesn't mean a development couldn't come in and say, you made this exception here still, and we want it. Because, let's face it, the area we live in, it's steep. It has a lot of hills, so we're going to have a lot of property in Murraysville that has steep slopes and poor soils. So this ordinance was written for a reason, and I think we should take that into consideration.
I'd like to inquire to our solicitor's opinion on whether we would really be open to challenge based on precedent here. We're concerned about the potential of precedent. Some of us feel like it really would be very individual to each future situation based on the lot size, based on conditions, emergency vehicle access, et cetera. If we were to vote to approve this, one exception, does that automatically mean we need to in the future, or we open ourselves up to very serious
I
litigation?
don't think you're opening yourself up to proving each and every exception or modification in the future. I think it's on a very individualized basis. It's within the discretion of council. I think that the alternatives, have to be examined. I think I heard the engineer say that with any extreme additional excavation, that the 15% slope could be met. So there's a rational reason if council were to say, we will grant the exception this time because the alternative of meeting the requirements of the ordinance is a more onerous situation than living with the additional 1.9%. So I hope I answered your question, Dr. Corns. I think you're not opening this municipality up to grant each and every exception in the future. I just think you have to look at how much this one makes sense.
Thank you.
If you would find it helpful or significant for the record, I mentioned that both DEP and Conservation District have encouraged us to go in this direction. I can provide your office with some correspondence from them. We probably have some, and I think Mr. Morrison's been in discussion with Jim Pillsbury of the Conservation District, but if it helps the record, in order to establish that this is a unique situation, I'll be glad to get that information to you. Jim, do you think you have enough already, just in email correspondence or phone calls regarding DEP and the fact that they like this better than the other one?
Thank you for
Hey,
that.
Dane.
All right, so I think at this point we have 2 council members that are in favor of it. Tony, Carl, I'm guessing not particularly in favor of it. It looks to me like at this point there's not 4 people to make this an agenda item, so it would not be an agenda item. Thank you.
Does that mean it stalls out tonight? Should I come back at the next meeting?
No, I don't think so. Yep.
So it stalls out.
Yeah. So we'll have to discuss it with staff and take it from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Is that on both topics? And I ask you, is that on the conditional use as well as the?
It's just on the slope modification.
Because, the conditional use, obviously, you have a right to proceed as a conditional use. I mean, that's the property owner's right. It's more the modification. So that's something just talk about with staff, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know can I ask you what you would need from us to take this farther while we're in discussion on the item?
Tony, Carl?
Is it, in each one of it's dead in the water, and it's, I just need to get the information back to my client, so we know what.
Basically, I think I've said what I've said. Ridiculous, but I don't have anything more that I can help you with.
Okay.
I feel the same. I go back to your first comment when you first came here. I don't know why anybody would want to build up there.
Well, I didn't say that.
You said that.
I didn't say that. You could read it back. I said his wife fell in love with the property.
Nah, you didn't say that.
Okay, I think let's just move on, coordinate with staff, and then we'll talk about it in the future. Thank you.
All right, very good, thanks.
Okay, that brings us to our council action items. We're going to start with 13A. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve a lease agreement with the Wilson Group for copier and scanner equipment for the administration, Public Works, and Police Department for a 60-month term.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from Jamie and Jamie. Mike?
Yes, this is for the scanners and copiers located in the municipal building, the police department, and the Public Works Department. All 3 units are in need of upgrading. We're having some significant issues with the machine here in the municipal building. All the existing lease agreements are due to be renewed. We consulted with other companies, but the lowest and best rate is the company that you see here in front of you, the Wilson Group. It's a 5-year agreement. It actually brings down our rate per month and generates a savings of over $1,000 per year and over $5,000 for the 5-year period. So I would recommend, staff would recommend approval of this lease agreement.
Okay. Questions or concerns from council?
The question I had is that the new equipment, is it new or is it an upgrade of used equipment?
No, it's new equipment. It's similar to the existing equipment that we have now. It's a slight upgrade, but it's new equipment. So the ones that we have now, at least in the municipal building, I can speak to directly, are having some malfunctions. We have the Wilson Group coming in quite often to conduct repairs. So it would be new equipment, and but it would also be an upgrade from what we currently have here with the issues that we're facing. So the finance director explained that we are at the end of the lease, so we do need to consider a new lease, whether it was with this company or a new one. But they are going to upgrade the equipment in the process.
How many copiers is included in that, like between all those buildings? Because I know copiers on their own, if you were to purchase them, the ones we would get are extremely expensive.
Correct. This would be one unit in each of the departments listed there. So this is for the 3 primary copier scanner machines that we use.
Okay. Further questions or concerns? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 13B. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to authorize staff to advertise ordinance number 1067-23, specifying the rate of pension contributions with respect to the police pension plan for the 2023 calendar year.
Second?
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. Casey?
Hi, Council. This is a yearly thing that we do. Act 600 requires us to put an ordinance together every year for the police contributions to their pension. So this is to put the advertisement out to pass that. The rate will stay the same as it has been in the last few years, so there's no changes from the past practice.
Okay. Again, this is somewhat clerical. Questions or concerns from council?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to 13C. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to authorize staff to advertise ordinance 1068-23, an ordinance authorizing the lease of the Sears House, the Townsend House, and the Bailey House.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Matt and Carl. Pretty self-explanatory. Mike, anything to add?
No, just that there are 3 different properties here that we are leasing out. We did increase the rates. This is the first time in a couple years that we've done that. Between the 3 of them, it's between a 3 to a 5% increase. We rounded the monthly rent figures to whole numbers, so anywhere between 3 to 5% on each of these 3 properties. And this is for advertisement. We would come back next meeting to adopt the ordinance. At that time, I believe we'll have all 3 leases executed by the current tenants for renewal.
Okay.
I have a question. So you're saying 3 to 5%, and maybe it's just my math, but the lease amounts from 2021 and 2022 said the Sears House was $800 per month, but they'll be charging $900 per month. That's like a 13% increase.
I don't know if that one went up to.
Is that, am I reading this ordinance correctly or not?
I'll have to pull
I
the
just
ordinance.
want to make sure the right number is written in there. I mean, if that's the increase that you intend, then it should say that, you know, the rent increase is larger than 5%.
Agreed. Let me just double
Like
check.
the Bailey House, it said it was $1,000 per month, but now it's going to be moved up to $1,100. That's a 10% increase.
Let me see what the numbers are.
And same for, you know, the Townsend Park, it's more than 10%.
You know what? I think I have them right here.
Or it's actually, that one's actually a little bit less.
We could just vote that the
I just
record would
wanna-
reflect the accurate percent increase for each.
Right, because
Right.
also the ordinance is,
Or was it the intention only to be increased 5% and the numbers are wrong? That's what I want the clarification on.
I apologize. Just one moment. I'm just trying to verify what the numbers were for last prior lease agreements, because they may be incorrect here. I know that when I ran the numbers, I made sure that I didn't go over the 5%.
we could just look to correct that because we're just authorizing to lease those.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what, you know, as long as the leaser is okay with the number, but we should look and just make sure that that's accurate on here, that's all.
Yeah, I mean,
We could vote to.
It's certainly a minor clerical issue, but I certainly didn't want to advertise it as one when we told the current renter a different number, and now
Right.
there's consternation. Because I've always heard that the same tenants have been in there, and they've been pretty good.
And they have duties at the park also,
Right.
right? I mean, that's part of,
So we could probably vote to advertise, just make sure we advertise correctly what that is, that's all.
That's correct. It is an advertisement. I'm not quite sure why the numbers aren't aligning. It may be a typo in the briefing itself. And in the ordinance, it simply reflects the exhibit, which is not attached. So I don't have the prior leases here. I thought I did, but this is a copy of the revised lease. So I can confirm those numbers and be sure. The primary consideration is to get the advertisement completed so that we can move the process along. I can confirm those numbers and come back to council next month before adoption, or next meeting before adoption, and ensure that we have accurate numbers on not only the prior figures, but also the current ones that were presented in the lease.
Sure, that's
So
good.
should we revise the motion then? Just that
So I'll revise the motion, authorize staff to advertise ordinance number 1068-23, an ordinance authorizing the lease of the Sears House, the Townsend House, and the Bailey House with the corrected numbers for those leases.
advertise it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was Mac and Jamie? Okay, motion and second. Yeah, very simple. Let's just make sure we have the right numbers in there, doing right by the tenants. Any questions or concerns before we vote?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 13D. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposal from Babbage Acoustics for the Marysville Noise Ordinance revision, the amount not to exceed $20,000.
Second?
Okay, Tony and Jamie. Mike?
I apologize, I was still reading the prior one. As we've heard at prior council meetings, we were hoping to revise the noise ordinance here for the municipality. We did reach out to a few firms to see if we could solicit proposals. We were unable to secure any of those, but we did receive a proposal from Babbage Acoustics. We have worked with this firm in the past. This is a professional service, so it doesn't necessarily need to be bid out, but from a best practice standpoint, we wanted to see what other sort of feedback we could get. By all accounts, the proposal set forth is not out of line with what we would expect to see in an ordinance revision of this type. So we would ask council to consider approval to hire Babbage Acoustics to revise the noise ordinance and rectify some of the existing issues that we're aware of in that ordinance.
Okay. Questions or concerns?
The ordinance makes a lot of sense, updating it, because it just does. But the way it was presented in the support documents was that it's $15,000 for the consulting services and $5,000 for equipment rental or equipment. And I guess my thought is that when you have a contractor come in, you don't get charged for his backhoe, and well, you get one price. So I was just surprised. Do we get to keep the equipment? They're monitoring devices.
No, I think it's just the way that they break down their fees. So the consulting services, as you stated, are $15,000 as hourly consulting rates, $200 an hour for a principal, $150 for an associate, $125 for, I guess, other consultants. So I'm not quite sure why they break the fee out that way. If they don't do it that way, I'm sure that they could just blend that fee into their existing rates. Ultimately, they gave us a total number of not to exceed $20,000. So no, there's no equipment for us to maintain after this. I don't know how the sound meters and kits are utilized, and I don't know specifically what that equipment is, but they do have a $5,000 equipment fee that is built into the proposal.
I would agree with the $20,000 item. I'd like to hear from them as to why they do that. It just seems odd to me.
Sure. If this is something council would like to postpone, we can certainly try to either gather that.
I'm not suggesting a postponement, actually, but I just would like retroactive, if you will. Why do they do that?
I could certainly follow up on that after the fact. But again, if council did want to postpone it, we could gather that information and present it back to you. So whichever way you would prefer, we can certainly get that question answered.
I'll say I don't have an issue with approving it if we can just have them explain why they bill it that way. You know, I'm sure most places just give you one price, but they're certainly billing you for the fact that their backhoe is going to be on your lot. So I hear you.
Right.
Great point, Carl.
But okay, so other than seeking some post-approval clarification for them, as Mr. Nesico said, it seems that the price is pretty on point. Any questions or concerns?
No.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 13E. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a contract extension with DeBlasio and DeBlasio Associates for the auditing services for the calendar years of 2023, 2024, and 2025, at an annual cost not to exceed $16,000 per year.
Second.
Jason?
Hi. DeBlasios has worked with us since 2005. They're a very professional firm. They're very familiar with how we keep our records, the reportings that need to be done, and are able to support and answer any questions throughout the year. Through the past, we typically go through a 3-year renewal with them, and the increase is about 12%, or $1,750 over the prior. I did look around to see what other municipalities typically paid, and we are actually 32% less than a neighboring municipality. So I do feel that at this point, with the history that we have with them and the support that the knowledge that they have on how we run things here, that it would be beneficial to just renew the contract with them with the minimal increase that we're seeing.
Questions or concerns?
JC, thank you for that extra step and providing that information. That's a question that you probably knew one of us would have asked, but thank you for being a step ahead on that and having that information readily at hand. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further thoughts? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Okay. That brings us to 13F. Can I have a motion, please?
Consider a motion to authorize staff to advertise ordinance number 1069-23, an ordinance authorizing a license agreement for the use of a radio tower and accessory building equipment located on or about the property at 3867 Windover Road for the operation of a municipal radio communications network.
Second.
We'll give the second to Mac.
You can have it.
Okay. Mike, anything to add?
I think council may be familiar with this. We've discussed a bit of this in executive session relative to the lease and the property matters there. We have an existing communications set up on this radio tower. We've had a lease with the property owner dating back to around the year 2000. That lease expired, and we wanted to renew that lease with the property owner and be able to continue to utilize the site and the equipment until we can find a better location for that radio equipment that serves the Public Works Department and as a backup system to the police department.
And just so we're clear, I mean, this is the same tower that's been there, no new construction. We're just compensating the property owner for the use of his land, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is just to advertise it anyway.
This would be the advertisement of the ordinance. All of the lease agreements have to be adopted pursuant to an ordinance. So we would come back at the next meeting asking for approval of the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions or concerns? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you, Council. That brings us to 13G. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the lease of oil and gas rights for approximately 30.5 acres of municipally owned property, Kowalczyk Park, a tax map number 49-21-03-0-101.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Jamie. Mike?
Yes, this is this item in conjunction with item 13H are working simultaneously to solicit bids for the oil and gas rights located at Kowalczyk Park. we would want to put out an RFP that has been prepared and examined by the solicitor, as well as, again, item 13H, an accompanying ordinance for this project. So there is an opportunity, we believe, to secure some royalties from the oil and gas rights there at this location.
Awesome. Questions or concerns? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 13H. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to authorize staff to advertise ordinance number 1070-23, an ordinance accepting a lease for oil and gas rights for approximately 30.5 acres of municipal-owned property, Kowalski Park, at tax map number 4921030101.
Second.
Thank you, Jamie and Tony. So obviously, right in line with the last one. Questions or concerns from council?
Nope.
No.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to our community development items. Can I have a motion for 14A, please?
Make a motion to approve resolution number 771-23, a resolution amending the Municipality of Murraysville Act 537 plan, Fosting Executive Park Phase 2, an 80,000 square foot office building and a 36,000 square foot retail center, Wilson and Manor Road, tax parcel 49-21-00-0-087, Zone B business.
Second.
Mac and Tony. Again, 537 plan. This is a clerical item dealing with the sewer up there. Anything to add?
No, I'm not sure if
Jim? Yeah.
Jim has anything to add as well, but
This is a standard amendment to the Act 537, plan for the development that was approved at the last meeting.
Questions or concerns?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 14B.
Make a motion to approve a request by Timothy and Patricia DiBiase to rezone approximately 1.5 acres of land located at 4051 William Penn Highway, tax parcel 49-14-02-0-097, from MU or mixed use zoning to B or business zoning.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We'll go Jamie and Tony. Jim?
This was presented at a public hearing and proposed to rezone approximately 1.5 acres of DiBiase property. This is the strip mall down next to Choice Auto where Donald Lynn's Pizza is, from MU, mixed use district, to B, business district. Planning Commission recommended approval.
Okay, questions or concerns from council? I think I'll start. I believe that the property owner, when they were here, they simply said they wanted to change this so as it would be more profitable when they sell it. There's a lot of mixed use down there. There are also still residential streets down there. I understand a lot of those residential streets are mixed use. There's some businesses and things that used to be homes there. But I guess I'll just start by giving my opinion. I just don't like the idea of someone saying, rezone this for me so I can profit more when I sell it. So I would be a no on this, and that's not the official vote, but that's my feeling on the project. Anyone else?
Dana, I'm in complete agreement with you on everything. I also think it's actually nice on 22 to keep some of that ruralness, which is our heritage there. And by keeping that mixed use, I think it does that.
Yeah, my thoughts on it are, like, I know that we rezoned up by Get-Go there on those homes, but nothing bordering those properties were mixed use or residential. They were all business on that side of that road. So, you know, I agree with Dane on this side that you know, those properties, though on the on the 22 side of those properties and his one on 22, those are all business. But the property where it extends to the back, they butt up against residential houses. And, you know, I don't think it's fair to rezone that on top of someone like that. So I'm in agreement with Dane on that.
So
Concur.
Concur.
I'll say I concur as well. Generally, I would like to see our commercial development restricted to that 22 corridor. So from that perspective, I can see the idea of there being a commercial use there, but unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, that term is really very specific to zoning. When we're talking about commercial use, the average resident is talking about that. We're talking about the ability for businesses to be able to be in an area. Whether it's business, commercial, however we're using the zoning term, our business. It's the folks trying to restrict that and preserve those rural elements. Ideologically, I'm all for a landowner profiting from their land. That's where I stand. With the exception that it impacts nearby properties and especially nearby residents. That I'm not comfortable with. Yep. If this were in a completely different location, if there were not such a mix and a variety of zoning around it, then I might be comfortable with that. And someday I might be all for rezoning this piece depending on, well, I won't be on council then, I'm sure. But depending on what happens in the future, maybe at some point, 5, 10, 15 years from now, there are no more residents there. They've decided to relocate to a lovely development off of Westertown Road. That sort of thing, and we want to rezone that whole area, but otherwise it feels a little too spotty for me with the land around it.
I think with mixed use, they have the ability to have business.
Correct. Exactly. That's what I'm.
So it's not like
It's a property value
it's not like
issue.
it's zoned residential to where they're right on 22 and can't have a business. It's already zoned that way.
It's a business right now.
Yeah, I don't think the timing is right for it. I feel like our mixed-use area is more charming on Old 22 than 22, but it's still critical to have it right now, and I don't see any reason to rezone that piece until we look much more broadly at zoning along that commercial corridor.
Okay, I agree.
So it sounds like there's a concurrence here. I will note that the motion on the floor is to approve. So whenever I ask for all those in favor, if you were in favor, that's where you would vote. And when I say all those opposed, that's where you would vote if you were a no. So with that being said, all those in favor of this rezoning, please say aye. All those opposed to this rezoning, aye.
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 Okay. The motion fails, it's denied, and it is unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. President, I would comment on next item C. There's a typo on the second tax parcel. It should be 49-11-14-0-999.
So,
Yeah.
so noting that the second parcel should be 999, we're moving on to 14C. Can I have a motion, and again, note that change to the second parcel ID number?
I'll make that. I'll make a motion to approve Z-6-22 Barrington Heights LLC to reduce the amount of dedicated open space by .017 acres through a lot line revision and add it to an adjacent parcel, tax parcel 49-11-14-079 and 49-14-0-999 R1 and authorized advertisement or authorized advertised ordinance number 1068-23, an ordinance codifying the change in zoning.
Second.
Thank you, Mac and Jamie Ling.
Tongue twister.
Obviously, we had a public hearing on this, about as de minimis as it gets, .017. Any further questions or concerns before we vote?
I mean, just one item.
Do you mean for the?
I guess we should note, yeah, I think we should do that. So there's the motion on the floor. Would somebody make a motion that we include the condition that the wetlands be taken into account as discussed at the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to add to the motion I made that what was said at the public hearing in in regards to the wetlands be added to that. So there wouldn't be encroachment into the wetlands.
Okay. Have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, so let's just do them in quick succession. First, we're going to vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The amendment is passed. Any questions or concerns before we vote on the main motion? Oh, yeah, Mike.
Yes, sorry, just one other item. You addressed the first one. The other is that it appears to be, we'll call it a typo, relative to this ordinance number being used above. So we will correct the ordinance number listed to reflect ordinance 1071, which would be the next in sequential order, so that we don't have conflicting ordinance numbers as well.
Is it still -23?
Yes.
So I alter my motion to the ordinance being number 10-71-23 as opposed to 1068-23.
Correct, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. That's more de minimis.
Yeah.
We're just going to note, please correct the ordinance number. With that being said, noting the amendment and the correction to the ordinance number, any final questions or concerns?
None.
Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we have one last item under engineering. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to authorize staff to advertise DPW 123 overlay project.
Second the motion.
Jamie, Ling, and Carl. Again, this is just the advertisement, but it is a very big project that we do. Mike, anything to add?
No, this was approved through the 2023 CIP. The project has a budget amount of $1.5 million.
Okay. Council, questions, concerns?
No.
Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? Oh,
What roads are being taken care of?
I would have to pull a copy of the CIP to be able to tell you that. I was trying to look at that very quickly. I figured that might be a question. Unfortunately, it's not listed here in the briefing, and I know that I won't be able to pull that up too
I
quickly.
know it's in the schedule. I
Yeah,
just
they're
was
on a
curious.
scheduled
That was
list,
just for my curiosity.
Pretty much the ones that
And for
weren't
anyone
done
else
this year.
that wanted to know that was
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I can say, if anybody wants to do a little bit of legwork, the 2023 CIP that is posted online does reflect the roadways that will be part of this project.
I will note that the roads are currently under review, and once the weather breaks, a final listing. We have a tentative list at this point. The final list will be as a result of the impact of the winter on the roads.
Makes sense.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
okay. Final questions or concerns?
On that note, although really somewhat unrelated, it may be helpful to toss into the Dropbox area, maybe just like a general resources folder where we might be able to keep CIP and a couple of other resources that we all might want to glance at. I mean,
That's a great idea, yeah.
Do that.
Perfect.
We can look to do that. If it's not already in there. I admittedly, I don't know all of the folders yet in the Dropbox, so I would assume it's not in there if you're asking for that, so.
no,
can
we
make
we
sure
could
that
probably
gets done.
find it if we were to dig back to, when that was
When we
approved or
looked
last
at it.
discussed, but
No, we can get something in there that have some helpful resources.
yeah, it'd be really helpful.
Quickly accessible.
Great.
Thank you.
Questions or concerns before we vote? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. So, do we have any old business? New business? No executive session, so just one more motion, please.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye. Gotta get a job doing that.